"Do you want to be my son's father?" she asked. The words hit harder than the cold wind off Highway 27. Jamal Rivers didn't flinch, but the wrench in his hand slipped slightly against the bolt. He looked up slow, deliberate as dark brown eyes locking with hers through a curl of engine steam. For a moment, time stood still between them. The young black mechanic in a grease-streaked hoodie, and the blonde woman in a clingy, rain-drenched dress that clung to every curve like second skin. Jessica shifted, suddenly aware of how soaked her dress had become. It had been dry when she left the house. Something simple, sleek, navy blue, and maybe a touch too fitted for a road trip with her son. But when the radiator burst and the drizzle turned steady, it molded itself to her hips, her waist, the arch of her back. Now, under the overcast sky and Jamal's quiet stare, she felt the heat rise to her cheeks. "Two didn't mean," she stammered, backing up half a step. "I was joking. Sort of. I don't know why I said that." Jamal turned his attention back to the radiator cap. "Overheated," he said flatly, wiping his hand with an old rag from his back pocket. "You'll need to let her rest a while. Might have pushed it too far." Jessica didn't respond. She was still trying to recover from her own boldness and the awkwardness of standing there in a soaked dress, chest rising visibly with every breath. What kind of person said something like that to a stranger? But Jamal didn't seem angry, just quiet, reserved. She watched the way he worked, precise, patient, his long fingers moving like someone who knew engines as well as breathing. There was strength in his silence, a kind of dignity that unsettled her far more than shouting would have. In the back seat, Owen peeked from behind the foggy window. His small face was pale with concern. Jessica opened the door and whispered, "We're almost good, sweetheart." Owen looked past her, eyes fixed on Jamal. "Is he like a superhero?" Jessica almost laughed. "No, baby. He's just a mechanic." "But he showed up like one," Owen replied, dead serious. Jamal poured bottled water into the reservoir, steam rising in hisses. The highway wind tugged at his jacket as he closed the hood with a solid click. Then he stepped back, brushing his hands clean, and finally looked Jessica in the eyes again. "You're good to go," he said. "Keep the heater running when you drive. It'll pull heat off the engine." Jessica opened her purse. "At least let me." "No," Jamal said, voice steady. "Not why I stopped." He turned, walked to his old Ford pickup, and climbed in without another word. The engine coughed, then settled into a low rumble. Before pulling away, he glanced at them one last time, not with annoyance, not with pity, just a kind of quiet understanding, like a man who'd seen too much to expect thanks. Jessica stood there on the shoulder of the road, keys in hand, heart thumping. The rain had slowed, but her dress still clung to her in a way she couldn't ignore her. Could she forget the way Jamal had deliberately not looked at her body, as if choosing respect when others might not have? That, more than anything, disarmed her. As she drove away, Owen whispered from the back seat, "You should have gotten his number." Jessica didn't answer. That evening, after putting Owen to bed in their small rental house near Cedar Grove, she found herself sitting at the kitchen table with a blank notepad. The smell of engine coolant still lingered faintly on her coat. She stared at the page, then slowly wrote 2 words. "The mechanic." Underneath, she added, "Black truck, Highway 27, fixed everything, took nothing." Then she circled the last 2 words. Her phone buzzed. A message from her sister, Beth. "You okay? Owen told Mom some guy rescued you on the highway. She's imagining a serial killer. Call me." Jessica smiled faintly. If only her mother knew how far from dangerous he had felt. Down the hall, Owen's voice drifted faintly through the wall. "Night, Dad," he whispered before sleep claimed him. Jessica froze. Her throat tightened. She walked to his room and opened the door gently. "Sweetheart, did you say something?" Owen rolled over. "Nothing. I was just talking in a dream." She leaned down and kissed his forehead, but she didn't sleep much that night. Across town, Jamal sat on the front porch of a small single-story home with peeling paint and a warped screen door. The air smelled like pine needles and old oil. His mother, Claudine, was dozing in her recliner inside, television still buzzing with static. He sipped coffee from a dented thermos, staring out into the night. Her words echoed again. "Do you want to be my son's father?" Jamal shook his head with a bitter chuckle. These people out here say the damnedest things, he muttered to himself, but he didn't laugh again. Because what he couldn't admit, even to himself, was how those words chaff a joke. Half a dare had reached some part of him that had long been silent. Some part that remembered what it was like to be 9 years old, waiting for a father who never showed. He stood, glanced back at the house, then went inside, locking the door behind him. Tomorrow, he'd head out early. There were 2 brake jobs on the schedule, and his mom had a doctor's appointment. Life didn't wait for feelings. But that night, he dreamt of a small boy handing him a wrench, and a woman's voice clear and steady saying something that no one had ever said to him before. 3 days later, Jessica Palmer found herself parked outside an auto shop that didn't technically exist. There was no sign above the door, no logo on the window, just a plain white garage at the edge of town with peeling siding and a flickering porch light that buzzed like a tired bee. But this was the address she'd found scrawled on the back of a church bulletin posted in the Cedar Grove Community Center. Fixing forward, Thursday and Saturday service days, 7:30 a.m. It was Saturday. She hadn't told Owen where they were going, just that they had an errand to run. He sat in the back seat, swinging his legs and humming to himself, clutching the same sketch pad he hadn't let go of since their car broke down earlier that week. Jessica checked the time, 7:26 a.m. She got out first, adjusting her denim jacket. This time, no soaked dress, no heels, just jeans, boots, and a tight ponytail that made her feel like less of a woman and more of a mother on a mission. Owen followed her, tugging on her sleeve. "Do you think he'll remember us?" Jessica took a breath. "Let's find out." They approached the side door of the garage. The air smelled like motor oil and wet gravel. She hesitated, then knocked. It opened almost immediately. A teenager stood in the doorway, white kid with freckles and a lanky build. "You lost?" he asked. "I'm looking for Jamal Rivers," Jessica said. "He fixed my car Tuesday. I'd like to return the favor, or volunteer." The boy hesitated. Then a voice came from deeper inside. "Let them in, Micah." Jessica's heart jumped. That voice, calm, low, Jamal. Micah stepped aside. Inside was a space that looked like it had been cobbled together from a junkyard and a church mission folding table stacked with toolkits, extension cords snaking across the floor, a half-eaten box of donuts sitting next to a jug of coffee, and 5 men of various ages working on a dented minivan's undercarriage like it was open-heart surgery. Jamal was by the far wall, bent over a clipboard. He turned, saw her, and froze. For a full 2 seconds, no one said a word. Jessica felt the heat creep into her cheeks. "Hi," she said softly. Jamal straightened. "What are you doing here?" She motioned to Owen. "He wanted to see you again. And I wanted to see this. What you do." Jamal gave a short nod. "You brought gloves?" Jessica lifted her hand. A brand new pair, bought the night before. She hadn't been sure what kind she needed, so she asked the guy at Home Depot what mechanics wore. "You'll be helping Micah sort alternators," Jamal said. "We've got 5 stops today, and we run tight." Jessica glanced around. "You let people tag along?" "Not usually. But you showed up anyway." He looked at her, not annoyed, not quite amused either, just resigned, as if he'd learned long ago that resisting certain things was a waste of time. "Don't trip over the cords. Don't get in the way. Don't talk too much. 3 rules. Got it." Micah handed her a plastic tub full of starter motors. "Just separate the ones with cracked housings. Anything that rattles, toss in the junk pile." Jessica knelt beside the table, trying not to wince at the cold concrete floor. Owen hovered near Jamal, sketchpad in hand. "Can I draw you while you work?" Jamal raised an eyebrow. "Why? You look cool when you fix stuff. Like Batman, but quieter." Jamal didn't respond, but he didn't say no either. By the time they loaded up the first truck, Jessica's fingers were stiff and slightly blackened. She hadn't realized how physical sorting could be. Jamal handed her a thermos of lukewarm coffee. "Only thing we don't ration," he said. She took a sip and nodded. "Tastes like gasoline. It's shop coffee. Be grateful it's not chewing through the cup." The first stop was an elderly woman in a mobile home on the outskirts of town. Her car wouldn't start. Jamal and another man named Wilson popped the hood, diagnosed a dead battery, and swapped in a replacement from the back of the van. Jessica watched as they worked not with speed, but with care. Every action was deliberate. No shortcuts. No showboating. The woman, Miss Lillian, offered Jamal a $5 bill. He refused. "You already bought the battery?" Jessica asked as they drove to the next house. Jamal nodded. "Picked it up last night. With your own money?" "It's not about money." Jessica leaned back in her seat. "You know you're allowed to ask for help, right? Or support. Help comes with strings. We don't do strings." He said it like a creed, like something he'd repeated to himself 1,000 times. The next 3 stops blurred into a rhythm crouch. Lift, clean, tighten, test. Jessica found herself holding flashlights, handing tools, even cranking a tire jack under supervision. Owen kept pace like a shadow, drawing everyone's faces, asking questions, occasionally handing out snacks from the small lunch bag he'd packed himself. It was at the last house Angela's place, a mother of 3 with a rusted-out minivan where something shifted. Jessica saw Jamal laughing. Not a full laugh, just a breath through the nose, a crack of a smile. Angela's youngest had climbed into the back of the truck and was pretending to be a mechanic, asking Jamal to fix her toy doll's leg with a screwdriver. And he did. Carefully, gently. Jessica felt something stir in her chest. Not romance. Not yet. Just something like gravity. A pull toward a man who didn't need anyone to know he was good to be good. As the sun dipped low, casting amber streaks across the gravel lot back at the garage, Jamal handed her a rag. "You did okay." Only okay? You didn't trip over the cords. That's a win." Owen tugged at his arm. "Next time, can I help change a tire?" Jamal looked at him. "Next time?" Owen grinned. "There's gonna be a next time, right?" Jamal looked at Jessica, unreadable. She didn't speak, just waited. He turned back to Owen. "Yeah, kid. I think there might be." Monday came with a soft drizzle, and the kind of gray sky that made even the bravest mornings feel reluctant. Jessica stood at the kitchen counter, stirring instant oatmeal while Owen sat at the table, scribbling furiously into his sketchbook. His latest drawing showed Jamal under the hood of a truck, one hand holding a wrench, the other resting on Owen's shoulder. It was crude, childlike, but deeply telling. Jessica glanced at the page. "You gave him a cape?" Owen nodded. "Because he's the only superhero who carries tools instead of weapons." Jessica smiled, though something about the simplicity of the statement hit her in the chest. She walked to the window. Across the street, a garbage truck groaned and hissed, making its morning rounds. Normal life kept moving. But something inside her hadn't returned to normal since Saturday. She still hadn't told her sister. Still hadn't told anyone what she was doing, volunteering weekends with a mechanic she'd only just met, letting her son follow a man who barely spoke. And yet, it felt more right than anything had in a long time. That afternoon, while Owen was at school, Jessica sat down at her laptop. The screen was blank, cursor blinking in rhythm like a quiet dare. She didn't mean to write a story, not really, but her fingers moved anyway, typing words she hadn't planned. "He fixed more than the engine. He fixed the silence between us." She stopped, erased it, typed again. "Some people show up with capes. Others show up with sockets and steady hands." The words felt honest, not performative, not polished, just true. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Jessica Palmer?" "Yes?" "This is Pastor Hill from Greater Mount Hope. One of my parishioners said you were looking into the Fixing Forward group. Is that correct?" Her stomach tightened. "I've been volunteering, that's all." "I see. I only ask because we've had concerns before. They're not a formal nonprofit. No tax records. No oversight." Jessica bristled. "So what?" "Well, in today's world, people want to know where their support goes. Who's liable if something goes wrong? Sometimes people just do good things without needing a paper trail, Pastor." There was a pause, then a quiet chuckle. "I like your spirit, Miss Palmer, but I hope your heart's as prepared as your mouth, because if you write about them, you'll stir up attention they may not want." She ended the call. That evening, she drove to her mother's house to pick Owen up. Her mother, a stern woman in her 70s, met her at the door with her usual scowl. "I heard you've been spending your weekends with a mechanic," she said. "Are you trying to end up in the news?" Jessica kept her voice even. "He's not just a mechanic, Mom." Her mother crossed her arms. He's not Owen's father either. Jessica looked away. Number. But maybe he's the kind of man a kid should have in his life. A beat passed. Her mother's gaze softened. Just barely. Don't get your hopes up too fast. Hope has sharp edges when it shatters. Later that night, Jessica found Owen asleep on the couch, sketchpad open on his chest. She gently lifted it, flipping through the pages. There was one that caught her breath, a rough drawing of their old family photo. Her, Owen, and a man-shaped blank space with the word, someone, written inside. She closed the book, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "We'll figure it out." Across town, Jamal sat beside his mother's bed, spooning warm broth into her mouth. Claudine's hands trembled as she tried to hold the bowl herself, but Jamal didn't let her. "You're fussing over me too much," she murmured. "You say that every night. You got that woman on your mind?" Jamal paused. She brought her son to the shop, helped sort parts. Claudine smiled weakly. "You let her stay?" She showed up, didn't talk much, worked hard. "Sounds like someone you used to be." Jamal looked down at his hands. The calluses were deeper now, the scars from a life of fixing things that didn't want to be fixed. "You think I'm doing the right thing?" Claudine reached up, brushed his chin. "There's right, and there's good. They don't always look the same, but I've never seen you this unsure over something that wasn't worth it." Jamal didn't respond. He just kept feeding her, spoon by quiet spoon. The next Saturday, Jessica and Owen returned to the garage just after sunrise. This time, no hesitation, no nervous knocking. Micah waved them in like they'd always belonged. Jamal met them by the back truck. He handed Owen a pair of small gloves. "For you," he said. Owen beamed. "Do I get to change a tire today?" "We'll see." He turned to Jessica. "You ever use a socket wrench?" She smirked. "You show me once. I won't forget." "Oh." They drove out in a Caravantwo trucks, a van, and a borrowed SUV filled with donated parts. The air smelled like pine and exhaust. Jessica sat in the passenger seat of Jamal's truck, her hand brushing against a clipboard filled with addresses. "These all in town?" "Some. Others out past Ashbridge." "You drive this route every weekend?" "Most of it." "Why?" Jamal looked ahead, voice quiet. "Because some people don't have anyone else to show up." She stared at him. "And who shows up for you?" His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. They reached the first house, a double-wide trailer perched at the edge of a muddy lot. A man in his 40s limped out, leaning on a cane. His name was Donnie. His car had a dead alternator and a cracked belt. Jessica handed tools, held flashlights, passed water bottles. She wasn't a visitor anymore. She was part of the rhythm. Later, while the others worked on the van, Jessica leaned against the fence, watching Owen show Micah how to shade faces in pencil. Jamal joined her. "He's got an eye for detail. He sees things most adults miss. He watches you." She turned, surprised. "What do you mean?" "When you're quiet, he gets quieter. When you're scared, he notices. You don't say things out loud, but he hears them anyway." Jessica swallowed. "His father wasn't like that." Jamal didn't ask for more. They stood in silence, wind rustling the trees. Then Jessica said, "You ever get tired of carrying other people's weight?" Jamal glanced at her. "Only when I start pretending I don't want to." She met his eyes. The moment stretched. Before either could say more, Owen ran up, breathless. "We fixed it. Donnie's car works." Jamal smiled real, for the first time since she'd met him. And in that smile, Jessica saw something rare. Not salvation, not promises, just presence. Just a man who showed up. Every time. That night, back home, Jessica opened her laptop again. This time, she didn't stop typing. The story was never meant to be shared. Jessica wrote it the way some people pray, quietly, secretly, with no audience in mind but her own peace of heart. She titled it, "The Man Who Fixed Things," and filed it under a folder labeled, "Personal," but the words burned with too much truth to stay hidden. The following Tuesday, while Owen was at school and the rain pattered gently against the window panes, she found herself reading it aloud to no one. Her voice trembled only once, the part where she described the moment Jamal handed Owen those gloves. He didn't say much, just gave him the right size, like someone who didn't need praise to recognize a child's longing. She saved the document, closed the laptop, and told herself it was enough. But by Thursday, her fingers itched again. The story wouldn't rest. That night, while scrolling through the website of a small local parenting magazine, she saw a submission link with the prompt, "Stories of Unexpected Kindness." Without letting herself think too much, she attached the file, added a brief note, and clicked submit. She didn't tell Jamal. Not yet. She didn't know if she ever would. Saturday arrived wrapped in cold sunlight. Jessica and Owen were already waiting outside the shop when Jamal pulled in. His truck rattled slightly, tailpipe puffing mist into the morning air. He stepped out, coffee thermos in hand, nodded once in greeting. "You're early," he said. Jessica shrugged. "Figured we'd beat traffic." Owen ran to the back of the truck. "Can I ride in the toolbox part?" "No," Jamal said without looking. "You break your arm, your mom blames me, and I don't fix bones." Micah appeared from around the corner, dragging a crate of brake pads. "We got a 2-car stop first, Mr. and Mrs. Diaz. She teaches Sunday school. Their Buick won't start." Jessica helped load the van. As she handed Jamal a folded blanket, their fingers brushed. She pulled back quickly, but not before noticing how warm his hand felt against the morning chill. They drove in silence, gospel humming from the old radio. Jessica stared out the window, watching tall Georgia pines flicker past. "You okay?" Jamal asked after a while. She hesitated. "I wrote something. About this. About you. The work." Jamal's eyes didn't leave the road. "Did you post it?" "Number. But I submitted it. To a small local outlet. Parenting blog. Nothing national." Still silence. "I didn't use your name," she added. He took a sip of coffee. "Okay. Okay?" He nodded. "People are gonna say what they want anyway. Might as well let one of them get it right." Jessica let out a slow breath. "I just wanted people to know what real looks like." They pulled up to a small ranch house where an older couple stood waiting on the porch. Mr. Diaz had a cane. Mrs. Diaz wore a cardigan with embroidered flowers and greeted them like family. The Buick's battery was dead, but Jamal replaced it in under 20 minutes. Owen chatted with Mrs. Diaz, who let him pet her cat, and Jessica helped sweep leaves from the driveway while Jamal worked. When it was done, Mrs. Diaz offered him a $5 bill. Jamal looked at it, then at her hands, arthritic, thin, but still holding out with quiet dignity. This time, he took it. "Buy something for your grandkids," he said gently, handing it back. Mrs. Diaz blinked, then hugged him without warning. "You're not what this world expects. Thank you." Back at the garage, as the others filed out and the sun began to set behind the rooftops, Jessica lingered. Jamal wiped his hands on a rag, leaning against the truck bed. "So, what else is in that story?" Jessica leaned beside him. "Everything." He glanced at her. "Even the part where you asked me that wild question on the highway?" Her cheeks warmed. "Especially that part." He smiled. "You scared me. You scared me first." They stood in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. "I meant it, you know," she said quietly. Jamal looked at her, brows slightly furrowed. "Not as a proposal or some fairy tale ending," she explained. "Just as a possibility, a real one." He didn't respond, but his hand shifted on the edge of the truck, just close enough that her fingers could find his. They didn't hold hands. They just let them rest there, side by side, warm and still. That night, Jessica received an email. "Congratulations. Your story, The Man Who Fixed Things, will be featured in our Thanksgiving issue. We'd like to include a follow-up interview, if possible. Please respond by Monday." She stared at the screen. Her first instinct was to close the laptop, but then she thought of Owen and Jamal and the people who waited on broken porches with no one else coming. She didn't write back. Not yet. But she didn't delete the message either. Across town, Jamal was locking the garage when Claudine's call came in. He answered on speaker while folding tarps in the back. "You working late again?" she asked, voice hoarse but clear. Was a long route. The Diaz family needed help. His mother paused. "You sound tired." "I'm all right." Another pause. Then, "That woman, she's still coming around?" "She is." "Good." Jamal didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. He hung up, sat on the tailgate of his truck, and looked up at the stars. They were faint, veiled by the lights of town, but still there. A boy had drawn him with a cape. A woman had written about him like he mattered. And for the first time in years, Jamal didn't feel like he was holding up the world alone. By Wednesday, the article had gone live. Jessica hadn't expected much. It was a modest post on a regional parenting blog, sandwiched between turkey brining tips and early Black Friday deals. But within 24 hours, the story had quietly ignited. Dozens of shares turned into hundreds. The comment section overflowed with gratitude, curiosity, and disbelief. More men like this, please. Does he take interns? Someone find this guy and give him a television show. Jessica sat at her kitchen table, phone buzzing every few minutes with new alerts. Owen, chewing cereal beside her, beamed with pride every time his name was mentioned in passing. You didn't say my full name, right? He asked. Just a boy? She ruffled his hair. You're the mystery hero's sidekick now. The story didn't name Jamal directly, but anyone in Cedar Grove or nearby could connect the dots. And by Thursday morning, the dots had turned into visits. Boxes of parts arrived at the garage. A retired teacher dropped off a thermos of homemade chili and a folded envelope with $200 inside. A woman from Atlanta drove 2 hours just to say thank you. Jamal stood at the edge of the garage, arms crossed, watching a local news van circle the block slowly. He turned to Jessica. You promised me small. She held up both hands. I didn't tell them, I swear. He didn't respond right away. He just looked at her, then back at the growing pile of packages and letters forming near the roll-up door. Why now? He finally asked. Jessica shrugged. Maybe people are tired of reading about what's broken. Maybe they just needed to see someone fix something. Jamal didn't smile, but he didn't walk away either. Later that afternoon, after the volunteers left, Jamal and Jessica stayed behind to inventory parts. Owen sat in the corner, coloring in a superhero costume for Jamal complete with a wrench-shaped chest emblem. Jessica taped labels to boxes while Jamal sorted through spark plugs. They want to do a follow-up, she said carefully. Interview. Maybe even a short video. He paused. I don't do interviews. I know. They'll twist it, turn it into something I'm not. I'll be there, she said. I'll make sure they don't. He didn't look up. You trust media too much. She moved closer, quietly. I don't trust the media. I trust myself. And I trust you. That stopped him. He set down the box he was holding and met her eyes. You trust me? He said, not angry, just surprised. She nodded. Enough to let my son follow you around every Saturday. Enough to write the truth. He glanced at Owen, who was now narrating a battle between Captain Crankshaft and the League of Rust. I don't want him thinking I'm something I'm not, Jamal said quietly. He doesn't, Jessica replied. He thinks you're someone who shows up. That's enough. That evening, Jamal drove his mother to her doctor's appointment. The clinic was full of faces he didn't recognize, young nurses typing fast, older men with tired eyes waiting in stiff chairs. Claudine sat beside him in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine she couldn't quite read. They put you in a magazine yet? She asked, nudging him. Not yet. You should let 'em. Folks need stories like yours. Real ones. He shook his head. They don't need my face. She turned toward him, her fingers lightly touching his wrist. You think you're hiding, but God's already pointing you out. That night, Jessica stood in her driveway, holding her phone with trembling fingers. She'd just received a message from a national syndication group. They wanted to pick up the story for a Thanksgiving Day radio feature. No names, no visuals, just her voice and the sound of Jamal working. She looked toward her garage, where Owen was using sidewalk chalk to draw a giant wrench across the pavement. She texted Jamal. Radio wants to feature the sound of the shop. No cameras, no names, just tools and voices. You okay with that? Minutes passed. Then, okay. Only if you read it. Jessica stared at the screen, then slowly typed back. You mean, narrate it? On air? Yeah. Your voice. Not some stranger. She didn't know what to feel. Gratitude. Pressure. Maybe both. At dawn on Saturday, she arrived at the garage before anyone else. Jamal was already inside, wiping down the table where parts were stacked. You nervous? He asked. A little. You'll do fine. Jessica watched him work, the way his body moved with quiet efficiency, the way he never raised his voice, never wasted a gesture, the way he said little but everything when he did speak. "Do you always get up this early?" she asked. "Started when I was 16. Needed quiet before the world started asking things of me." She nodded. "I get that." They didn't talk much after that. Just prepared. The radio producer arrived with minimal gear, just a handheld mic, a directional recorder, and a warm voice that respected boundaries. Jessica read her piece softly, slowly, seated at the same table where she'd first sorted alternators. Jamal didn't hover, but he didn't leave either. When it was done, the producer leaned back and smiled. "There's a lot of noise out there," he said. "But this sounds like grace." Jamal walked him to the door, shook his hand without speaking. That night, they listened to the broadcast together. Jessica sat on the worn leather couch in Jamal's living room. Claudine was asleep in the back. Owen lay curled up with a blanket at her feet. Jamal stood in the doorway, arms crossed, listening as her voice floated through the speakers. He didn't fix the world. He didn't fix every broken thing, but he fixed what was in front of him. Quietly, steadily, without asking for applause. And sometimes, that's enough to start again. When it ended, silence filled the room. Then Owen whispered, "You sound like a movie, Mom." Jessica laughed through a tear. "I think that means you liked it." Jamal finally spoke. "You told it right. I tried." He looked at her, and for the first time there was no distance in his eyes. Just presence. Just a man who showed up and finally let someone stay. By the following Monday, everything had changed, and nothing had. The shop still smelled like motor oil and burnt coffee. The same flickering bulb still buzzed above the garage door. Jamal still arrived before sunrise, rolled up his sleeves, and went to work with the quiet rhythm of a man who measured time not in hours but in the things he repaired. But outside, the world had taken notice. The radio segment had gone viral. It was rebroadcasted on morning shows, picked up by national platforms, and turned into a podcast clip that circulated faster than either of them could have predicted. Jamal's voice's soft, careful, and brief had been left in, just once, during a moment where he said, "You fix what's in front of you, not the world, just what's in reach." That line was quoted, shared, printed. People were calling him the quiet mechanic, a nickname Jamal found both absurd and oddly accurate. Jessica's inbox flooded. Her editor, who hadn't spoken to her in months, offered her a feature column. News crews requested interviews. A veterans organization in North Carolina asked if Jamal would speak at a community event. A pastor in Houston offered to help expand Fixing Forward nationwide. And Jamal? He stopped answering his phone. Jessica found him that evening standing in the corner of the garage, looking out through the roll-up door. It was dusk, and the light cast his silhouette in soft orange against the stacks of cardboard boxes filled with donated parts. She approached carefully. "There's a man from Denver offering to ship you a lift kit, brand new." Jamal didn't turn. "I don't want a lift kit." She waited. "I don't want banners or business cards," he continued. "I don't want 15-minute features and men in suits asking for logos. I just want to fix the damn cars." Jessica stepped beside him. "You're allowed to stay small, Jamal. But people want to help." "They don't want to help," he said quietly. "They want to own it, shape it, make it fit their story." "You think I did that?" He turned now, looked her in the eyes. "No," he said. "You told the truth. That's different." She exhaled. "Then let me keep telling it." He looked tired, more tired than she'd seen him before. Not from labor, but from attention. It wore on him like a heavy coat, one he never asked for. "I was never trying to be known," he said. "I was just trying to be useful." "And you still are," Jessica said gently. "But maybe that usefulness is bigger now than you thought." Jamal didn't answer. The rest of the week passed in a blur. Every day, more letters, more visitors, more volunteers. A teenage girl who'd heard the story came to the garage with her father's old socket set and asked if she could learn. A veteran with a prosthetic leg offered to pick up and drop off car parts from donors. And yet Jamal remained grounded in the same routine. Early morning, hot tools, quiet repairs, short answers. When people asked for interviews, he declined. When someone mailed a custom cape with Fixing Forward embroidered on the back, he passed it to Owen without a word. Jessica tried to shield him where she could, taking calls, filtering requests, politely declining sponsorship deals. But it wasn't sustainable. The shop was growing. The people kept coming. And slowly, Silently, Jamal was stretching thin. One evening, after Owen had gone to bed and Claudine was resting, Jessica stayed behind at the garage while Jamal finished up an oil change. He closed the hood, wiped his hands on a rag, and looked at her across the empty space. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. Why'd you ask that question that first day?" Jessica blinked. "What question?" He gave her a look. She smiled faintly. "You mean the one about being Owen's father?" Jamal nodded. She stepped closer, arms crossed loosely. "Because I saw the way you looked at him. Not just kindly, steadily, like you saw him, not just a kid on the roadside." Jamal leaned against the truck. "You scared me that day. I scared myself." There was a pause. "I'm not his father," Jamal said, voice low. "I know. I don't know how to be that. You don't have to know yet. Just keep showing up." He looked down, hands fidgeting with the edge of the rag. "I didn't have one growing up," he said finally. "My mom did everything. My dad, he left when I was 4. Sometimes I think I remember his voice, but maybe I made it up." Jessica felt the words sink into her chest. "I guess I never thought someone would ask me to step into that space," Jamal added. "Like, I wasn't allowed." "You are," Jessica said softly. "You are more than allowed. You're invited." He didn't say anything, but he didn't look away either. That Saturday, something changed. They were at a rundown duplex just outside town. A woman with 3 kids and a busted-out van sat on the front steps, looking exhausted and cold. Jamal crawled under the vehicle with Wilson while Jessica kept the children busy with juice boxes. Owen sat beside one of the kids, a boy around his age, and explained how a timing belt worked using stick figures and gestures. The repair took longer than expected. The axle was warped. Jamal's knuckles were scraped, but they got it running. As they packed up, the woman, Miss Gracie, called out, "Hey, what do I owe you?" Jamal looked up from the toolbox. "Just don't stop," he said. "Don't stop trying to get where you need to be." She blinked, then nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. On the ride home, Owen leaned forward in the back seat. "You're kinda like my real dad now, right?" Jessica turned, but said nothing. Jamal glanced at him in the mirror. "What makes you say that?" Owen shrugged. "My dad used to promise to show up. You just do." Jamal didn't answer right away. But later, after they got home and Owen was in bed, he walked to Jessica's porch with 2 things in his hand, a spark plug keychain and a folded note. He gave them both to her. "What's this?" she asked. "A gift," he said, "and something I never told anyone." The note was written in Jamal's blocky handwriting. "I don't know what being a father looks like, but I know what showing up looks like, and I'm still here." Jessica looked up, eyes glassy. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered. "I know," Jamal said. And for the first time he stepped inside her home, not as a visitor, not as a mechanic, but as something more, something beginning, something real. Jamal stood just inside Jessica's living room, hands shoved awkwardly into the pockets of his work jacket. The air smelled like cinnamon and something faintly sweet, maybe vanilla, maybe the kind of candle people lit without really thinking. It was warm, still. For a moment he felt out of place, like he'd brought too much of the outside world in with him: dust, oil, old ghosts. But Jessica didn't rush him. She didn't offer coffee or start conversation. She simply took his coat, hung it by the door, and returned to the couch like this was the most natural thing in the world. He sat beside her, unsure what to do with his hands. She curled her legs underneath her, watching him with quiet patience. "I haven't been inside someone's home in a long time," he admitted. She nodded. "This isn't someone's home. It's ours, Owen's, mine, and now, maybe a little bit yours." He looked down at his hands. "That's big. It doesn't have to be all at once." Outside, wind rustled the branches, and a dog barked somewhere down the block. Inside, everything settled. They didn't talk about labels or promises. They talked about simple things. Her favorite movies from when she was a teenager. His mother's Sunday ritual show she made sweet tea like it was medicine. How Owen had started sketching a full comic book series starring Captain Crankshaft, and how Jamal was secretly proud of it. At one point, Jessica turned to him and said, "You know what's funny? This all started because I wore the wrong shoes and broke down in the right place." Jamal smiled. "Nah, you wore the right shoes. I just happened to be nearby." They didn't kiss that night, But their fingers touched intertwined, not by accident. And when Jamal finally stood to leave, Jessica walked him to the door and leaned her forehead lightly against his chest. He stood still for a moment, then rested his hand gently on the back of her head. No words, just warmth, just presence. The next morning, Jamal walked into the garage earlier than usual. Wilson was already there, sorting donated filters. "You look different," Wilson said, not looking up. "Different how?" "Less like a man trying to outrun something." Jamal chuckled. "I still got the same boots." "Yeah, but you're standing still for once." They worked in silence after that. Around 8 a.m., a new volunteer walked in, young woman, maybe early 20s, with oil-stained overalls and a confident stride. "I'm Shauna," she said. "I read about you. You taking help?" Jamal gave her a look. "You know how to torque a lug nut? Better than most guys I know." He handed her a socket wrench. "Let's see." That afternoon, Jessica picked Owen up from school. He climbed into the car, backpack slung low, grin wide. "Guess what?" he said. "My teacher played the radio story in class." Jessica's eyes widened. "Really?" "Yeah. She said I could bring in drawings next week. Said the story made some of the other kids cry a little." Jessica smiled. "You proud?" Owen nodded. "Yeah, but mostly proud of Jamal." She reached across the center console and squeezed his hand. "Me too." That evening, Jessica visited Claudine. The older woman was resting in her recliner, a knit blanket draped over her lap and a book of crossword puzzles open on the table beside her. "Well, look who finally decided to come say hello," Claudine said, her voice raspier than usual. Jessica knelt beside her. "You mind some company?" "Not if you brought pie." "I brought stories," Claudine chuckled. "Even better." "Oh." They sat and talked for nearly an hour. Jessica told her about the interview requests, the donation drives, the way Owen kept drawing Jamal with broader shoulders and bigger hands. "He draws him like he's 10 feet tall," Jessica said. Claudine smiled softly. "That's how children draw the people they trust." Jessica hesitated. "Do you think he's ready for this? I mean, for us?" Claudine's eyes grew sharper. "Child, he's been carrying the weight of everyone else's repairs for most of his life. Don't you think it's about time someone handed him something whole?" Jessica blinked back tears. "I don't want to be another job he feels obligated to finish." "Then don't be. Be the place he doesn't have to fix anything." Later that night, Jamal drove to Jessica's house. He didn't bring tools or parts, just 2 paper cups of hot chocolate and a book Owen had accidentally left in the garage. He knocked once and waited. Jessica opened the door wearing sweatpants and a faded college sweatshirt. She smiled. "You brought cocoa?" "And homework," he said, holding up the book. Owen ran to the door. "Thanks. I was going to be toast if I lost this." "You're good," Jamal said, handing it over. "Captain Crankshaft needs his origin story." Owen grinned, then darted back inside. Jessica stepped aside. "Come in." Jamal hesitated. She touched his arm. "You're not an outsider anymore." He stepped in. That night, they sat on the couch, sharing cocoa and silence. Not the empty kind, the kind that means you don't need to fill every moment, the kind that says, "You're safe here." Owen fell asleep in Jamal's lap, head against his chest, breathing even and deep. Jessica whispered, "You don't have to say yes to anything right now. Not to me. Not to him." Jamal looked down at the boy curled against him, then up at her. "I'm not saying yes," he said softly. "I already did. The day I didn't drive past you on the highway." Jessica nodded, eyes glistening. Sometimes families begin with papers and rings. Sometimes they begin with a flat tire, a quiet man, and a boy who just wanted someone to show up and stay. Jamal had never attended a school assembly before, not as a student, and certainly not as someone being clapped for. But there he was, sitting stiffly on a folding chair near the front of Jefferson Elementary's gymnasium, sandwiched between Jessica and Principal Halbert, while the walls echoed with the sound of 100 tiny hands clapping. Owen stood on the stage, awkward in his pressed khakis and button-up shirt, holding a microphone with both hands like it might float away. A giant poster behind him showed a rough but charming drawing of a superhero in a jumpsuit holding a wrench, Captain Crankshaft, unmistakably inspired by Jamal. "My mom says heroes don't always wear capes," Owen said into the mic, glancing toward Jamal. Sometimes they just fix things without asking for anything back. This one fixed our car, then he fixed our family. There were gasps, and a few adults wiped their eyes. Jessica's hand found Jamal's on the chair between them, her fingers curling around his in silent solidarity. When the applause rose again, louder this time, Jamal looked down at the polished floor and smiled, unsure what to do with all the warmth being thrown his way. Afterward, as the crowd dispersed, Owen ran to Jamal and threw his arms around him. "You okay?" the boy asked. Jamal crouched to his level. "Yeah, I just never been called a superhero before." You better get used to it," Owen grinned. "I told the whole school. They all walked home that day, no car. No rush, just 3 people taking slow steps down Maple Street like it belonged to them. The sky above was crisp and blue, with clouds like brushstrokes. Neighbors waved. One elderly man on his porch gave Jamal a nod, the kind reserved for veterans or preachersmen who'd earned quiet respect. At home, Claudine was sitting in the living room with a folded newspaper in her lap. "You made page 7, she said without looking up. Jamal raised an eyebrow. 7? Above the obits and below the mayor's dog show. That's solid ground." He laughed, easing into the armchair across from her. Jessica brought out lemonade and slices of sweet potato pie, still warm from the oven. "This is too much," Jamal said. "You better get used to that too," Jessica replied. Later that evening, a call came in on Jamal's phone. Unknown number. He almost didn't pick up. "Mr. Knox?" the voice asked. "This is Marcia Carter from KJX Radio. We've been hearing a lot about what you did for Jessica and Owen. We were wondering if you'd come in for an interview?" Jamal blinked. "Interview? Just a short segment highlighting local heroes. Nothing fancy. We think people could use a story like yours." He hesitated. "I'm not comfortable in the spotlight." Marcia laughed gently. "You don't have to be. Just speak like you did when you showed up and helped someone in the rain." He agreed, eventually. Jessica drove him to the studio a week later. On air, Jamal was quiet at first, choosing his words with the same care he gave to bolts and gaskets. "I didn't do anything special," he said into the mic. "I saw someone who needed help, and I stopped. I think maybe more of us could do that, just stop." The interview lasted 8 minutes. By the time they got home, Jamal's voicemail was full. A letter arrived 3 days later. It was from a man in Iowa who'd heard the segment on the radio. "My daughter's car broke down last winter," it read. "Nobody stopped. I didn't realize how much that hurt until I heard about you. You reminded me who I used to be." Jessica found the letter on the counter and read it twice. "You're changing people," she whispered. Jamal looked away. "I'm not trying to. I know. That's what makes it real." But not all the responses were kind. One night, after closing the shop, Jamal walked to his truck and found a piece of cardboard under the windshield wiper. On it, in thick black marker, someone had written, "Stick to fixing cars, don't play family." He stared at it, jaw tight. The words felt sharp, familiar, like a voice from his past. He didn't tell Jessica. Not that night. Instead, he drove to his mother's house. She was in her garden, kneeling beside a row of peonies. "They're saying you're a hero," she said, not turning around. Jamal knelt beside her. "You believe that?" She plucked a weed with slow fingers. "I believe you showed up when it mattered. That's more than most." He exhaled, watching her hands work the soil. "Someone left a note, said I should stay in my lane." She finally turned to him. "Then maybe it's time you made a new road." Back home, Jessica noticed the change in his eyes. She didn't press, just brought him a cup of tea and sat beside him in silence. Owen came in later, dragging a blanket, and curled up between them on the couch. "Are we a real family yet?" he asked sleepily. Jamal looked at Jessica. Her eyes held no doubt. "Yeah," he said softly, "we are." That night, Jamal sat at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. The letter from Iowa sat beside his coffee mug. In his hand, he held a pen, poised over blank paper. Finally, he wrote, "To anyone who's ever driven past someone in need next time, stop. Not for praise, not for thanks, just because someone once did it for you." He folded it, tucked it in an envelope addressed back to the radio station. And for the first time in years, he slept through the night. The smell of pine wood and sawdust still clung to the frame of the new front porch. Jamal stood there that Saturday morning with a power drill in one hand and a coffee mug in the other, surveying the final screw he'd tightened. It was nothing fancy, just a small extension with 2 sturdy steps, but it meant Owen could jump off without twisting an ankle anymore. It also meant something else: permanence. Jessica stepped outside, barefoot, her flannel pajama pants brushing the wood. Her hair was tied back in a loose braid, and she held a plate of warm biscuits and turkey sausage. "You always build stuff when you're nervous," she said. "Who says I'm nervous?" "The man who's rebuilt my fence, tuned the lawnmower, rewired the porch light, and now built an entire staircase. What's got you pacing like a cat in a thunderstorm?" Jamal took a slow sip of coffee. "He's coming." "Your father?" she asked, eyebrows raised. Jamal nodded. "Called last week after hearing the radio interview. Said he was surprised. Said he wanted to talk." Jessica set the plate down. "That's a good thing, right?" He didn't answer right away. Memories flickered his father's voice shouting, doors slamming, silence stretching across dinner tables like cracked asphalt. Depends on what he wants. Around noon, a silver Chevy pulled into the driveway. An older man stepped out, tall, with a cane and a cautious gait. He wore a worn military jacket and mirrored sunglasses, even though the clouds were out. Jessica slipped inside with Owen, giving Jamal space. "Jamal," the man said, "you look taller than I remember. I was 16 the last time you saw me." The man nodded. "That's right." They stood there in silence for a moment. Then Jamal gestured toward the porch. "Sit if you want. I built it." "Looks solid," his father said, lowering himself slowly. "I heard the story on KJX. The car, the woman, the kid. You sound different. You didn't call for 10 years. Why now?" His father leaned the cane against the railing. "Because I didn't think you wanted me to, and I didn't think I deserved to." "That part's true," Jamal said flatly. "But I'm not here to fight. I'm here to ask something." The old man reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. "I'm dying, son. Stage 4 lung. I've got a month, maybe 2. I don't want forgiveness, but I want to see the kind of man I raised, even if I wasn't there for most of it." Jamal stared at the envelope but didn't take it. "I raised myself. That's what I wanted to see. You did it. Without me, you turned into something good." For the first time, Jamal looked at his father not as a towering figure of his childhood, but as a tired man, worn by regret. "Come inside," he finally said. Jessica made biscuits. Inside the house, the mood softened. Jessica greeted his father with a polite smile, and Owen, after a cautious stare, offered him a drawing of the Captain Crankshaft character. They sat around the kitchen table, and time, once frozen in pain, began to thaw. Later that week, Jessica drove Jamal to his second radio appearance. This time, they'd asked him to co-host a special episode on everyday justice stories of people doing the right thing, without cameras, likes, or hashtags. "You ready?" Jessica asked as he tightened his seatbelt. "Yeah," he said. "Funny thing is, I used to hate my voice. Thought it didn't sound like someone people would listen to." "Well," she smiled, "you were wrong." In the studio, the host introduced Jamal as the man who reminded us that small acts can shift the biggest walls. They asked him about forgiveness, legacy, community. He answered calmly. But when the final question came, "What's one thing you'd tell your younger self?" He paused. Then, quietly, "Don't run. From love, from pain, from family. Let it hit you. Then choose to stay." That night, the station's website crashed from the number of people trying to download the episode. Letters poured in, again, from war veterans, from single mothers, from grown children estranged from their parents. One letter, scrawled in uneven handwriting, read, "You gave my son permission to come back home." 1 week later, the Allendale Community Center held a fundraising banquet. Jessica, in a long emerald dress, stood beside Jamal as they announced the creation of a new program, Knox Hansan Initiative, for training young boys in auto repair and life skills, sponsored by local businesses, powered by Jamal's name. As the applause faded, Owen tugged on Jamal's jacket. "Does this mean I gotta learn engines now?" "Only if you want to," Jamal said. "But you'll be good at it," the boy grinned. "I already drew a logo." On their drive home, Jessica looked over. "Did you ever imagine your life would look like this?" "No," he replied. But maybe that's the point. You don't fix your life by planning it. You fix it by showing up. At home, as Owen brushed his teeth and Jessica folded laundry, Jamal stepped out onto the porch. The night was quiet. Crickets sang. The wood under his feet creaked gently, a reminder that even new things carry the weight of what came before. He pulled the old cardboard note from his pocket, the one that once told him to stick to fixing cars. He turned it over, scribbled on the back, "I fixed more than that." Then, he folded it in half and tossed it into the fireplace. As the flame took it, Jessica joined him. "Cold out?" "A little." She wrapped her arms around his waist and laid her head on his shoulder. "Warm in here, though." "Yeah," he said, pulling her close. "Home tends to do that." And just like that, with nothing dramatic, no music, no headlines, Jamal Knox finally stopped running. Not because someone asked him to, but because he chose to.